AVC YouTubers, Tony here. Tony's LPs are us. Welcome once again to my channel. Hope everyone's doing well. Appreciate you stopping by. This little segment is about a record that has stood the test of time. It's over 51 years old, 52 years old, and that's this record. Double album, 8 times platinum, sold 20 million copies right off the bat. Yellow Brick Road. Goodbye, Yellow Brick Road. The great Elton John. This is his 7th studio album, released in October of 1973. Now, I plan on doing a series of albums from 1973 because when I look through my collection, there are so many great standout records that, again, stand the test of time. I still listen to these records. They're still my favorites. And I can remember when I bought these albums, and I could still tell stories about when I first heard them, or when I heard them continuously with my friends, and when we even jammed to some of the songs when we used to get our guitars out and jam a little bit. So first one I picked up was Yellow Brick Road, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, Elton John. The great artwork by the illustrator Ian Beck. He did the cover artwork where we have Elton John with his tour jacket on, going through a window in a mural onto Yellow Brick Road. But if you can see, the yellow brick road is cracked. Maybe that's, symbolic or has a metaphor to it. But this is a cinematic record. It's just a miracle record. It just flows. It plays great. It sounds great. The musicianship, just the sheer audacity of this record in 1973, some of the language in this record, some of the topics in this record were controversial, and they could still be considered controversial today. I'm not going to go into the minute details of each song. I'm just saying, if you don't know this record, pick it up, listen to it on YouTube, or get the CD. The CD is one CD. It runs about 80 minutes. It's been reissued many times. I'm going to go over some of the reissues that are of note. It's also on DVD audio, but it's in the Grammys Hall of Fame from 2003. But this is a cinematic record. It takes you into another place. Each song flows into the other. Side one is just probably one of the best side ones of any album, especially any double album. Side one has Funeral for a Friend, which the band basically recorded in one day. It was the first take. That goes into Love Lies Bleeding, Candle in the Wind, the great song to Norma Jean and those out there. And I talked to some folks not too long ago in conversation, and they didn't know that Norma Jean and Candle in the Wind was Marilyn Monroe's real name. Then it goes into Benny and the Jets, and I'm going to talk about that. So that's side one. That's a perfect side. It's got great illustrations. There's some illustrations other than the cover from Mr. Beck. You can see the lyrics. Each song has its own artwork. It's just a masterpiece. It's just a real masterpiece. It's available on MoFi Gold CD, SACD, DVD audio. 2004, there was a Blu-ray audio. I don't have any of these. I just love this record. I just listened to it again twice. I have a first pressing here from 1973. That's near mint. I have a lot of copies of this. So this is not the copy I may have bought in 1973. Here is the second record. And this is a label of MCA, American, a domestic label from 1973. I also show you a label that came out a little bit later. This sounds better than that label I will show you. This has a lot more nuance to it. Funeral for a Friend engulfs the entire soundstage as it moves for you. It feeds right into Love Lies Bleeding. To me, it was always one song. But I just want to emphasize how great this record is if you don't know about it. And like I said earlier, 1973, there was so many great records out. This record was conceived to be initially recorded in Jamaica. Elton John had, I guess, loved what he heard from the Stones' Goat's Head Soup, so they went to Jamaica. They were on the heels of the Stones just leaving, and the Stones had some problems with the Jamaicans. It was Jamaica was in turmoil. Elton John got there. It was kind of too wild for them. They didn't really dig the studio setup. I believe Eddie Kramer was the original engineer, so they didn't record there, but Elton wrote 4 or 5 songs there. His writing of the music of Bernie Taupin's songs were just extraordinary. He would write 3 or 4 songs in a day or two at the piano, and these songs were tremendous. None of the songs are similar. The lyrics are just, the lyrics hit home, and like I said, they're very cinematic, and I'm going to go over a few of the songs, not all of them. There's too many to go over. It's a double album, and I don't want to bore you with that. But just to emphasize how great this record is. So they went from Jamaica back to a chateau in France where they finished this record. And I believe they were able to record this record in about 2 weeks. 2 weeks for this record is just extraordinary. This was his 7th album. The band would learn the record, learn the tune after Elton John wrote the music. And he would teach it to the band, and the guitar player would hear the riffs in his head. The drummer, Nigel Olsen, is all over the place on this record. He is just tremendous. And Davy Johnstone, the guitar player, said when he heard Elton John writing Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting, he already knew what he was going to do with the guitar. And Elton had his ideas, and it just snowballed. But it's just a great band. Bernie Taupin, of course, lyrics. Dee Murray, Nigel Olsen, Davy Johnson, and Elton John. Just, what can I say? This band clicked. They got together, like I said earlier, in Jamaica, moved over to France. 2 weeks, the record was done, mixed it. The sequencing is great for this record. You know, they finished it in 73, and it actually was out in 73. Benny and the Jets, that has a classic story. Benny and the Jets, the last track on side 1, became an overnight sensation in a black radio station in Detroit. They started playing it. I believe it went to a number 1 for that particular radio station, and they kind of coerced the record companies to put Benny and the Jets out as a single. Elton John didn't want to do it. He didn't want to do it. But then when he found out that this black radio station loved this record so much, and he himself was such a fan of black music of the 50s and 60s and 70s, he said, let's put it out as a single. And of course, it became a number 1 pop single. It was, I think, number 15 on the R&B charts. And I remember when I worked in a record store, when this record was out, everyone bought this record. Folks of every nationality, every race, they bought this record. And of course, Benny and the Jets led Elton John to having a spot on the great black dance show or music show called Soul Train. And Elton John was one of the first, if not the first, but one of the few white artists that were invited to play on the stage of Soul Train. So if you don't know about Soul Train, go to YouTube, check out Soul Train. It's great. So many great artists on there. But of course, I think Bowie was on it, and Elton John, some of the few white artists that were actually on Soul Train, being it was a black show at the time. Now, what happened with Benny and the Jets was just that formula that Elton had. Everything he touched turned to gold. The band was tight. It just rocked. like I said, if you don't know this album, please pick it up. Please go for this album. It's just amazing. Now, the intro to Benny and the Jets was a mixed note, and they decided to leave it in as if it was a live recording. And to add to that, they added clapping and applause from Elton John's show at the Royal Festival Hall, and they ended it with applause from Jimi Hendrix's performance at the Isle of Wight. So Hendrix's performance at the Isle of Wight is actually on this recording. Now, I don't know how they did that. I don't know if I don't know anything about the rights, if they actually had to pay the Hendrix estate money at the time, because Hendrix had died. But that's just a cool story. There's so many good stories about this record. If you look it up and you go to some of Elton John's books and some books on records of the year 1973, they always highlight the albums, and they always highlight this album as much as some of the other Elton John records that were all classics. So as far as Funeral in the Wind, or Candle in the Wind, Candle in the Wind, the story about Norma Jean, that came to Bernie Taupin because Elton John had gave him a Marilyn Monroe owned and worn dress for his birthday, because he was such a big fan of Marilyn Monroe, and that song kind of emanated from that. It was one of his heroes. And he said he remembered someone said that, Clive Davis. He heard Clive Davis say of Columbia Records at the time, referred to Janis Joplin as a candle in the wind. And he said it could have been about James Dean. It could have been about Montgomery Clift. It could have been about Jim Morrison. It could have been about anyone who had fame, and that fame basically blew them out. So there's a lot of stories in this record that go to the heart of how this record was done and how it was produced. But it's just a great record. I just listened to it. I listened to side one twice because I wanted to hear the two different pressings that I pulled out. But just an amazing record. It's the Saturday Nights Are Ready for Fighting was actually later on covered by The Who. That was inspired by the fights in pubs in Jamaica. So actually Elton John took that concept and wrote Saturday Nights Are Ready for Fighting. This record has every genre in it. It has a country twang. It has Jamaican, which is Jamaican jerk-off. It has ballads. It has rockers. Your sister can't twist, but she can rock and roll. It just flows. Each side of these four sides have multi-gold singles on it. The record, I said, sold 20 million copies. Who knows how many copies it sold to today, because I'm sure it's still selling in abundance. It's been reissued. I have a picture disc of this. It's been reissued many, many times. And the reissues, some of the reissues I know are better than the original pressings as far as the sound quality. If you want to go check Mike from the In Groove, he did a nice little rating of some pressings. He doesn't rate this pressing too high, but I think this pressing sounds pretty good. Perhaps he didn't have a first pressing. Perhaps he had this later pressing, which is a little noisy. Doesn't sound as good as the first pressing. This is maybe a 75, 76 pressing. You can see the different label with the blue or light blue or tint on it. So, but overall, as far as not going over the sound quality of any pressings, this record just is a must-have. It's a must for any collection. And if you're an Elton John fan, then you already have it. I'm just going to talk about the songs, go over those. Here's the band on one of the trifolds. There's the band. This was produced by Gus Dudgeon and recorded, it says at Strawberry Studios in France. I know it was a chateau as well, so maybe that was the inside That was what the Chateau studio was called. But you have, like I said, side 1, which was great, a great side, one of the best sides of all time. Then side 2 is Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. It's just a song about when you hit the top and you're still lonely and you still miss home, you still miss your family because you're out on the road, you're swamped by fans. Do you go back home? Can you ever go home? So Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, you should really read those lyrics. This song has no title. Gray Seal, Jamaican Jerk Off has that Jamaican beat. I've seen that movie too. Another cinematic story by Bernie. Sweet Painted Lady. The Ballad of Danny Bailey. 1909 to 34. Dirty Little Girl. All the Girls Love Alice. Side 4, Your Sister Can't Twist But She Can Rock and Roll. Saturday Night's Alright for Fighting. Roy Rogers, he talks about Roy Rogers. That's a little bit of a country thing. Social Disease. And it kind of ends with a great ballad harmony from the first song, which was this immersive Funeral for a Friend with organ and piano. And let me just talk about the band. The synthesizers that Elton plays, the piano that he plays, it's all up front. He is center stage. The band doesn't overshadow him. They complement him. And from what I read, they were able to do this record in 2 weeks or so. The band was just clicking, so professional. Just an amazing achievement when you think about it. Just mixed perfectly, sequencing perfectly. Sound-wise, no 2 records sound the same. You get an up-tempo, you get a ballad like Candle in the Wind, and you get Benny and the Jets, which have it just touches everything. It has that rock and roll feel to it from the 50s. And don't forget, this was 73. 1955, 1958, when we got those great records from Chuck Berry, Jerry Lee Lewis, all those great rockers. It was close. It was 13 years, 14 years. Now it's 52 years from when this record was made. But when these rockers were made, rock and roll was still fresh. So you have to think about it in those terms. But the record still holds up today. Every song is a classic. Of course, everyone has their own favorites. Like I said, Benny and the Jets, one of my favorites. I love that record. Used to hear it on the radio all the time. Funeral for a Friend, Benny and the Jets, of course. Candle in the Wind, Your Sister Can't Twist But She Can Rock and Roll. Saturday Night's Alright for Fighting. Sweet Painted Lady. Just so much good records on here. I could go on and on, but check it out. Once again, I'll show you the trifold. Here you see the band. There's a great cover, and the back has some credits. All the lyrics are here. There's no booklet, no poster. It was probably an expensive record to produce this way with the trifold, but Elton John was making a lot of money for MCA, a lot of money for the home studios in UK and America. So that's my 2 cents about Yellow Brick Road. Hope you like it, but this will take you on a journey. You will not forget Yellow Brick Road. If you haven't heard it, you're in for a treat. I'm kind of envious because this record has so many twists and turns. It's a comfort record for me. It's also a perfect record. It's a perfect double album. It's made everyone's must-hear record before you die, that type of thing. Elton John is still doing it strong after all this time. So check out Yellow Brick Road. Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. I call it Yellow Brick Road, but goodbye Yellow Brick Road. Thanks a lot. Hope everyone's doing well. Hope you like this segment. Hope you like our channel. If you haven't subscribed, please consider it. It really helps us out. We really appreciate it. So keep rocking. Elton and Bernie are still rocking. Give this a listen if you don't know about it. And if you do have it, of course, give it a listen again. because I really haven't listened to this record in a while. I pull out the CD in the car, but in the car is not the same as listening to it on your turntable. So keep rocking. Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, a classic, a journey, a cinematic marvel. And read the lyrics because the lyrics are really cool. Take care. Thank you.